Hello, and welcome to the American Rescue Plan Act funding question and answer discussion for Fire Station 4 and solar on city facilities. I'm Kayla Coleman. I'm a community engagement specialist with the city of Ann Arbor, and I'll be leading us through some introductory material before I hand it off to project managers to introduce themselves and their projects. So first we'll get started with a little bit of background on the funding itself. So what is the American Rescue Plan Act? This is funding through the federal government that's provided to local governments as bailout for the pandemic due to COVID-19. The city of Ann Arbor received $24.2 million. The allocation of this funding has been modeled on the Community Development Block Grant funding allocation. And there are very strict federal regulations that stipulate how funding can be spent. The criteria that the federal government uses in guidelines for how funding can be spent fall into a couple of different categories, as you can see on the screen here. There's a section for COVID-19 or negative economic impacts. This could include things such as behavioral healthcare needs, rebuilding public sector capacity, and other support for small business or the community. Another section is premium pay for eligible workers, which can be used retroactively. Employees deemed essential are the ones that this is applicable to, and workers performing other essential work. A third category of the funding criteria is government services to the extent of the lost revenue. So amount is determined based on a prescribed formula, and this can be used for services that are directly provided by the local government, such as cybersecurity or capital projects. And a fourth category for the funding criteria are investments in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure, such as building and upgrading facilities, distribution and storage, construction of publicly owned treatment infrastructure, managing and treating stormwater, and other uses as well. Some important information to know about the funding criteria is that the period covered runs from March 3rd, 2021 through December 31st, 2024. So costs can be incurred through December of 2024, but all expenses must be used in full by December of 2026. There are some prohibited uses, and these include pension contributions and debt payments. The funding, the American Rescue Plan Act funding cannot be used as non-federal match. There are significant reporting requirements associated with this funding, and ARPA funds are temporary in nature. So one of the other guiding principles is that care should be taken to ensure that we avoid creating new work or new programs that will need an ongoing financial commitment, because this is a one-time funding allocation. The city of Ann Arbor has identified a number of projects that meet the eligibility criteria, and those are what are being considered now for public discussion and community input. These projects were identified by staff that carefully reviewed the federal guidelines to determine eligibility criteria. The projects were identified with consideration to prior council direction. And projects, again, because this funding has to be spent by the 2026 deadline, it was important that these projects had a timeline such that that would be possible. So that's a little bit about the funding overview. No, that was quite brief. There is also a recording from a meeting on January 12th, which goes into a little more detail. And I encourage you to check out that recording if you're looking to learn a little more about the funding. With that, we're going to cover two of the projects tonight, and I'll ask each project manager to please introduce themselves and their project. This will include just a brief overview of these two items. And the first is Fire Station 4. So over to you, Chief Kennedy, for your introduction and your project.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Mike Kennedy, I'm the fire chief for the city of Ann Arbor. my pleasure today to talk about the replacement for Fire Station 4 as a possible project. Fire Station 4 is on the east side and is at the corner of Huron Parkway and Platt. This project would build the city's first carbon neutral facility, a net zero fire station. This would replace an existing building. This facility would produce energy through geothermal heating and cooling, solar panels, and an architectural design that encourages energy efficiency. Another real benefit of this project is the alignment of the discharge for the fire trucks that are assigned to the station would connect with Platt and Huron Parkway, so we would have a significant safety increase from a traffic safety perspective as well. The total project cost is estimated around $6 million. There's one picture on the screen, and I'm gonna do a screen share and show some others real quick. Hopefully that's showing up okay.
It is.
So this is a view if you were kind of standing in Scheffler Park looking northeast. So we would be kind of in the discharge where the fire apparatus would exit. This is the south elevation. One of the things to point out is that the entire roof would have a solar array, and then we would also extend the solar out into the parking lot, and this is to capture additional solar for the facility. The plan would also be to have some EV chargers, electric vehicle chargers, for either employees that are signed out of the fire station, firefighters, or visitors to Scheffler Park, that they could charge their cars as part of that parking. Kind of a similar view, but a little bit of an overhead that really demonstrates the solar array. A lot of the geography on the south side of the station would be used for that geothermal field. For those unfamiliar with geothermal, it involves a significant amount of wells. And so this area here, the plan would be for those wells to be sunk in that space. And then, so this is just for some perspective, Huron Parkway, and then kind of Platt Road. If you were to just drive out of the driveway and continue straight, you would proceed north onto Platt. And then this is a view if you were driving southbound on Huron Parkway. So really the three sides of the station are very much public facing sides. The west elevation, we're looking at some sort of potential art as part of the public art requirement for city buildings, and really trying to capture a lot of natural light in the bay so the public can see, kind of literally see into the operations of the fire station, see the apparatus, and then also really decrease on lighting needs during daylight hours. So that is the Fire Station 4 project. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Chief Kennedy. And let me resume. You should be seeing my screen again. Great. And now we're over to Dr. Missy Stoltz for introduction of the Solar on City Facilities project.
Thank you very much, Kayla, and thanks everyone for coming today. It's my pleasure to tell you a little bit about a project we've been working on, which aligns with multiple city goals and objectives, is adopted by council and supported by the community, including our goal to power city operations, meaning municipal operations, with 100% renewable energy as soon as possible, and our goal of achieving community-wide carbon neutrality in a just and equitable way by 2030. So this particular project focuses on generating energy at city facilities through the use of solar. And we've been working now for months with installers to design solar systems on 19 city facilities, including almost every single park site that has a building in which we could put it, or viable land space, as well as large buildings and critical facilities like our water treatment plant and our wastewater treatment plant, public works building, city hall. And it's not just about solar. These buildings are being designed to also be battery ready, and a few of them likely will have battery storage. And that's relevant from a resilience standpoint to make sure those critical operations can continue functioning no matter what happens outside. So if the big grid goes down, we want to make sure that we have critical power supply to be able to dispatch and continue providing the services we need. One of the benefits of this project is that it directly leads to operational savings. We anticipate over $500,000 a year in savings accrued because we're producing our own energy, and so we don't have to pay those energy bills. And this, to give a sense, will be accrued over at least a 30-year period. The assets we're looking at now are warranted for a 35-year period. And of course, we would expect to see that kind of performance take place. In total, the estimated cost is $8.5 million. And to follow in the illustrative footsteps of the chief, I'll show you some really quick pictures of what this might look like. Thank you so much, Kayla. So just 3 examples to share here, and I'll show the screen here in just a second. So I'm going to show you 2 park sites. This is Gallup, and here the design that we're looking at. For those of you familiar with Gallup, right now there's nothing here. We're actually looking at building a pergola and putting solar on top, so we'll be able to extend the space and the coverage so people can enjoy the outdoors while also generating 100% of the electricity needed to power Gallup Canoe Livery. This is the farmers market in Carytown. Right now, what you can see, these are old solar systems. They were installed a very long time ago, and they're integrated into the roof system. They're not as productive as today's technology, but we want to leave them there, and we want to expand the amount of solar that we have on site. You may be asking why we don't have more solar. We're going to maximize the amount of solar, but the farmers market doesn't actually use a lot of power. And so in addition to adding solar, we're adding electric vehicle chargers at the farmers market, so that we can kind of get a win-win as we electrify our transportation system. And then this is the Water Recovery Center, also known as the wastewater treatment plant. And I know this is a little hard to see. This is the main operations building, but this roof is actually covered with significant, all that blue is the design for solar on site. And as a side, for those interested in the city's sustainability efforts, we're also looking at some biodigester potential on site. So this is a project we're excited to see move forward. And if it were to be funded through rescue plan funding, we could be starting installations as soon as late summer, fall. Thank you very much, Kayla. Back to you.
Great, thank you. Let me resume my screen share, just a moment. Okay, so thank you both. Thank you, Chief Kennedy and Dr. Missy Stoltz, for the information about your projects. I'm going to cover a little bit about the decision-making process and what happens next in the engagement process for American Rescue Plan. So this timeline illustrates where we've started, where we are, and where we're headed. So projects have been identified. As we talked earlier in the slides, there were specific funding criteria, and staff have worked to identify potential projects that could meet those criteria. That happened in September and October of 2021. The list was further refined by the project selection group and is now being shared with the community. That has included, in addition to these community conversations taking place in these question and answer sessions, there are also informational videos posted on a2gov.org/rescue funds. That's the project website. Those informational videos are posted about each project. Each video is just about 2 minutes long and provides some additional images and description and context for what each of these projects might entail. In January and into February, we'll be conducting a survey asking community members to help provide preferences as to which projects they would like to see funded. Ultimately, City Council will make a decision about how to allocate the funding, and that's expected in March of 2022. And as stated previously, the projects will be implemented beginning in 2022 and will need to be fully complete by 2026. That is the requirement of the ARPA funding. And with that, I believe that completes our presentation. There's additional question and answer sessions coming up. We are today here, Wednesday, January 19th, for the Fire Station 4 and Solar and City Facilities. We've got the City Clerk Election Center discussion coming up later tonight, and a couple of additional projects, Gallo Park, Universal Basic Income, and coordinated funding, all taking place tomorrow. So please tune in and join us to ask your questions and to learn more about each of these exciting projects. Thank you so much for joining us. And have a nice evening. All right,
Hello.
wonderful.
Well, thanks
So-
so much for letting me participate in this process.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining. And so I was going to just share a little bit of the overview material to see if that helps clarify anything, but then I'll hand it over. We can talk more on your specific questions. So what I wanted to show you, sorry, I think I've got the screen share going now. Eric, just for background here, this is a little bit about the American Rescue Plan Act funding. There are federal regulations that stipulate, I think what's most important here is that there are federal regulations that stipulate how it can be spent. And there are various criteria that projects fit within. And those headers are here. The main buckets or categories that eligible projects fit into. And think, like, to answer your question about how projects may have been selected, the federal guidelines, which were shown back there in those 4 buckets, those federal criteria were closely reviewed by staff. Council direction about what projects have been council priorities in the past, those were reviewed, and then that was used to identify which projects could be spent within the deadline. There's a tight deadline. The money does have to be used by 2026. And with that process in mind, there are, I believe, at this point, 13 eligible projects that have been identified. And 2 of those are the 2 that we're here tonight for, are the Fire Station 4 and the Solar and City Facilities. And Missy and Chief Kennedy, either one could both do a quick overview of their 2 projects, if that would be helpful for you. Or Eric, you started out right off the bat, you had some specific questions. And if you'd rather just jump into those, that's fine too.
No, that's great. I saw, so capital projects are what is covered, one of the things, and you're talking about Station 4. Which station is that?
That's at Huron Parkway and Platte on the east side.
Okay. And you already put solar panels on top of station, what is it? The one over on Eisenhower?
Yeah, that's Station 6. There's no plans on that station is our newest station in the best shape. So that's why we made that investment.
Oh, okay. And as far as what's going on with the rebuilding of the station on North Campus?
Active discussions with U of M. No, nothing is solidified.
How is it determined what they pay us every year for fire services? What they pay the city?
So little bit of a rabbit hole on that question. The University of Michigan direct payments to the city is 0. The state of Michigan has a program where, based on what the estimated cost of the real estate is, there's a formula based on that SEV, that equalized value of property for state-owned buildings. So if we had a jail in our city, if we had a university, if we had a big state of Michigan complex, so it's not specific to U of M, it's specific to state-owned buildings, which the university is a public university. So we get a check from the state of Michigan, and that's about $1 million a year.
Which is like a tiny percentage of what the prescribed formula is in my recollection.
You are correct with that. It is, the state has funded that more than they have previously. So we I'm happy to report that. And then we have kind of a unique relationship with Station 5 that they provide us the facility and pay for the utilities. But I would say that that facility is no longer kind of suitable what I would want in a 2022 fire station. So
Let's be frank, that facility is a mess. That facility is leaky and it's poorly maintained. You know,
I'll just stick with it's not what I would want in a
okay, well,
2022
I can
fire
be
station.
more candid than you can, I understand. But so you're just in discussions with the university.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole, there's two issues at play. One, where it would go. There's not a lot of vacant land up there, and the vacant land is primarily owned by the U. And then two, once we identify the where, it's is the U going to pay for it? Is the city? Those are kind of that's kind of the fork in the road that we're at of trying to determine location and then construction funding.
So you wouldn't think of putting it on the same spot where it is on North Campus?
I mean, if they're agreeable to that, but that, again, we haven't even had that conversation.
Okay. Is there a plan for that? I mean, I know this is a little bit off topic, but is there a plan for that conversation to go forward? Or do you have, is there ongoing talks, or, you know, what's the liaison situation?
There's routine communication with the city administrator and the university on this sort of topic. So it's ongoing is truly the best I can state right now. So
okay, and the $1 million that they pay, who administers that? Do you don't, as the fire department, they don't say, okay, you get $1 million. It's like it's just divided, I assume, between other agencies.
It goes to the city's general fund, and the fire department is funded out of the general fund. Excuse me, I take that back. That the state has we've only gotten that for a couple of years, and the city that has gone exclusively to a capital fund for fire stations. So we have the Station 4 that this project was meant to to discuss. So there's Station 4, Station 5, and then Station 3, all of which really need new facilities. And then our Station 1 downtown, we're actually getting ready to start a renovation project on that in calendar 22. So we do have, if Station 4 is funded, then this is going to give us money to apply to Stations 3 or 5. We do not have enough funding saved to completely fund this project, but the money that we've gotten from the state in recent years has been dedicated to a fire station capital project.
Okay, so and Station 6 is sort of in a funny place. That's the one on Eisenhower?
Correct.
Because they have trouble going east during rush hour on Eisenhower Parkway. So and then you've got the Pittsfield station just a mile north of them on State Street, so that they are more able to get to the west side of State Street, excuse me, the east side of State Street than Station 6.
I don't know that I would agree with that, with in out of respect. Yes, State and Eisenhower is a congested intersection. I don't know that it's that impactful for response times. And we can get east of that intersection quicker than the Pittsfield station that's on Ellsworth and State.
Yeah, it's, you know, because it's a boulevard, it gets congested with traffic going in the, you know, one direction where they can't get out of the way of the fire truck unless they go on the opposite side, which makes sense. But anyway, I thank you for letting me digress here. I really appreciate your time.
Sure.
I had one more question for you, and I guess it's already been answered. Is there any chance of refunding the CERT team? I was on that however many years ago, and I thought that it had it was a force extension. It had certain valuable characteristics beyond merely what it was designed to do, which is help you respond to disasters or situations. But so I was wondering if there's any plans to reinstate that, or what your thoughts on that are.
There aren't any plans, and there's kind of a twofold issue with CERT is and thankfully we don't have emergencies in the city on a very routine basis where we would activate that sort of thing. And so that was kind of an issue of how do we find value for the people that are volunteering their time for that. So that's kind of one aspect, but the primary aspect is coordinating volunteers takes a lot of time and effort, and we don't have the staff resources with emergency management currently to devote towards that. The person that was doing that, other items were kind of being pushed to the side that were core to that person's responsibility to help coordinate CERT. And in order for us to do that, it would really require at least a 50% FTE to do that. And that's really, that was the main crux of why that program was ended, was the availability of staff to coordinate it. And it's just a lot of time and effort goes into that. So.
Okay. They did, like they did do things like, or I should say, patrol the art fairs for medical emergencies and that kind of stuff, the football games. There were probably other things. But again, it's that for that rare, like you say, it doesn't happen that often, but they're ready to stand around instead of taking a fire truck or a police officer to stand by a downed power line or those kinds of things. But anyway, I get you. I hear you. I have a question for Missy, if that's okay. I don't know if this is on exactly your area of expertise or authority, but I heard from council person, what's her name? I'm sorry. Dish, thank you. Sorry. That the reuse center, not the reuse center, the drop-off station is going to get a major rehab. And I was wondering just if that's going to, if there's any, again, it's a capital project, if that could qualify for those federal funds, or just what's going on, where the funds are coming from for that.
Yeah, Kayla, you may. Yeah, absolutely. And Kayla, you probably have more details than I do. My understanding is that there is some grant funding actually that's been secured to support that. But Kayla, do you want to share what you?
I have not been as closely involved in those discussions at this point. The city's resource recovery manager, Sarah Mason, is the one that's taking the lead on that. But I think that is correct, that there's a grant from Eagle that will support that.
Great. That's so
good.
Because
we love other people's money. That's great.
Yes.
Right. Well, and I, if you have been out at the drop-off station, in the past any period of time, it's just a mess out there. I've been to townships in Canada with 8,000 people that have a much better facility for recycling than ours. It's muddy. It dissuades people from using it. It, certainly doesn't help our image as a leader in recycling to have a place like that. And to their credit, the staff does an excellent job of trying to keep the place organized and the facility organized. It was neat as a pin inside the shed there, the pole barn, but the place isn't paved. It rains or it snows, and it's you're taking your life in your hands to drive through it now. So anyway, I'm glad to hear that. That's my speech.
No problem. Thanks for your questions. Do you have anything in particular, questions about the Fire Station 4 or the solar and city facilities or the in general American Rescue Plan Act funding process?
I think installing solar on top of every facility is, the more you can encourage that, the better. The state removed the tax disincentives of installing solar, as I recall. So now your private person can put solar on their house without it killing their taxes. So that's helpful. And I don't know about the state of rebates and various collective projects, but the more the city can promote that, let people know what kind of opportunities there are, the better. Now that there's no Ann Arbor news anymore, it's hard to know what's going on. Mm-hmm. But or it's harder to know what's going on in some ways. So, but Zoom allows this kind of interaction. So what can I say? It's amazing, and I appreciate your your time. Also, your guys, the fire department responded to Shashang, the restaurant yesterday. Were there any injuries or anything in that? I didn't think so. It was just like a grease fire or something.
Couple of General Tso dinners might have been impacted, but that was about it. So
Are they going to be out of business for a while? I mean,
yeah,
how
and
is
for
this
the fire was pretty extensive in their duct work. So fortunately, it didn't extend beyond that, but they're going to be down for a minute. So
yeah, the fire extent. I lived not near there, and it burned through the roof. I mean, you could see flames coming out of the stack there or something. So good job. It was appreciate that. Stopping the neighborhood from burning down. There was, yeah, one other thing that I'm curious about, Missy, is your position. The council yesterday passed the resolution for examining to do a feasibility study of the utility of a publicly owned utility. So how is that? You know how that's going to proceed?
Ish. Yeah. So last night council actually passed a resolution that did three things. One was advance a feasibility study into a traditional utility kind of procurement, taking over from DTE the assets. And so that'll be a pretty intensive assessment. We're working on the RFP now, but we won't have that ready for a few weeks out on the street. The second was an options analysis of what are other pathways in addition to that could help us meet our climate and equity goals. And then the third was actually starting work on the sustainable energy utility, which is a complementary utility that doesn't focus on buying the infrastructure, but focuses on generation. So it focuses on the city. It's a public utility, but would focus on owning solar panels and geothermal systems and microgrids and nanogrids and battery storage, which could eventually grow to be a full-blown kind of takeover system, but could also supplement and kind of slide in the middle and help our goals fast and furiously. So they didn't just give us one thing, they gave us three things to do last night, and all of them are in play at the moment.
Okay, so the SEU would be in parallel with the current Edison system, but how would that impact rooftop solar? Could the roof right now, if you want to have rooftop solar, DTE pays you wholesale, you pay retail, and that's not true net metering. So could if the SEU was running, could people send their rooftop solar into the SEU instead of into the
that's precisely right. So we can't, what you couldn't do right now is sell any excess power to your neighbor, but in a sustainable energy utility you effectively would be. So the utility, part of the modeling we've done so far, of course technical modeling, but the economic modeling is, what if we do net metering, and you get the value for whatever excess generation that you have. And so that's key to the economics. There's other benefits too. I don't know if you've heard of the 1% cap that our utilities have. Consumers just upped it to 2%, but they're basically saying 1% of total generation that's it. That's all that can be renewable. They don't have to accept more on the grid. Well, it's completely the opposite in a sustainable energy utility. If Chief Kennedy's roof is capable of producing 150% of his usage and his next door neighbor is Kayla and she can only produce 20%, I need Kennedy to overproduce, because I need to be able to distribute. So we're actually trying to incentivize max generation locally, which means local jobs, energy staying local, less likely disruption within the system. So I'm personally really excited about the prospect.
That's awesome, because it's just monopoly economics that DTE is engaged in and not paying the fair market price, because the truth is that when you're generating the most solar during the summer, it's when the spot market is also the highest, and they're paying up the wazoo for jet engines to generate, or diesel to generate their peak, when they could be encouraging solar instead for those peak periods. Because you're generating at the same time you need it. So but their continuous opposition to net metering and anything having to do with competition is, that's why it would be great to get out from under.
Well, and together, to the extent that this is also useful information, we're preparing to intervene, and we do regularly with the Public Service Commission in their cases, whether that's their integrated resource plan or IRP, or we just received news they're going to file on Friday a rate increase, and the lawyers are already working on the paperwork for us to be a formal intervener in that case.
Oh, great. And you were talking about what you would have to buy from DTE if it became, what is the essential infrastructure. And my personal recommendation, although I'm not sure exactly of the cost benefit, is just to abandon all of the DTE light posts and just go with our own. And just because they're doing such a terrible job, both in repair, but also in the kinds of lights and their inflexibility. You know, we should be illuminating streets and sidewalks and crosswalks, not the treetops in the center of the street. So that's, the DTE is really, they're not doing a great job. They pulled all their lights out of Highland Park, and then Highland Park just went to solar, and they're doing much better, I think, than they were under DTE. So, and certainly the evidence, like in Holland, Michigan, where they're refunding money trying to figure out what to do with their excess money to return to the ratepayers, is awesome. That's a great model you can sell to people, so thanks for your work on that.
You're welcome. Thanks for your comments.
Those are, I think, my only issues. Maybe I'll try to contact Sarah Mason regarding the drop-off, just to see what's going on there. I used to work for Recycle Ann Arbor. I ran the reuse center when it was years ago, when it existed.
Nice.
So yeah, it was a good experiment. I hope they can get it going again. It's exciting that is the resource recovery facility running now, or is it?
Yeah, the MRF, the material recovery facility, that is now operating. I know they were still doing some testing. Again, Sarah will be a better contact. Sarah Mason will have the latest and greatest of where things stand. But I know that Recycle Ann Arbor was operating it and doing the testing and running loads through. I just don't know if they officially are all done, green lighted, regular business as usual. I think they may still be in sort of their setup and testing phase. Yeah.
Well, that's great though.
But I think they are accepting loads of materials from the city. I don't think that we are any longer, we were for a while taking them elsewhere. And I think that Recycle Ann Arbor is now processing them at our MRF. It may still be under the heading of a test scenario. Great.
Yeah. Excellent. Oh, Chief Kennedy, I had one other quick question. What's the status of Station 2 at the corner of Packard and Stadium?
Our fire inspectors are out of there with the planned renovation of Station 1. We're going to move our fire prevention to Station 1 from Station 2. And then that facility is currently, this hasn't been confirmed, but kind of soft plan that it'll be turned over to the Housing Commission for their use. Council has not fully signed off on that, but that has been presented as a alternative several times. And Jennifer Hall, the director of the Housing Commission, has they've actually worked on some schematics and some possible future use of that site. We haven't had an operational fire company out of there in close to 20 years. So.
Right. Yeah. Oops. I'm gonna shut my phone off here. Well, thank you very much again.
Yep.
Appreciate this. What a treat to, it's just appreciate so much being able to, just being able to interact with staff. It's really a treat, and I appreciate your time very, very much. It would have been nice if there had been more people here, I guess, but what can I say?
Well, thank you.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Much appreciated. Have a good evening, Eric.
You too. Thanks for answering all my ridiculous questions.
Nothing ridiculous.
Not at all.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye, everyone.